Yes, introduce yourself.
Yeah, guys. Good afternoon to everybody. Can I hear good afternoon?
Good afternoon.
Thanks, guys. So my name is Sriram Pearson. At our table, listening to some of the lovely points made by the panel, we have a spin. So we would like to view this as in the whole notion of inclusion needs inclusion within inclusion. So what we mean by that is, to some of the lovely points you made, is we would just like that it's not bringing those who are marginalized into mainstream, but there seems to be clearly a lot of marginalization within mainstream. So we would like to really just, as a very energized group, just call to action that for all of us to think and ponder and to be able to act on. There are some very well-rated school leaders here. So it's just a sort of from our table call to action. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Others from the room. What else will you share? Yes.
So when I heard about RTE initially, I thought it's going to be a burden to a lot of private teachers because they are training kids they are not used to. But I think what Bindu said was it's an opportunity for private educators to push and innovate to show that they can include and actually make a difference in the kids' lives. Because then you can convince governments to see how well you've done it. Rather than always complaining that it's not going to happen, why are they pushing kids at us? This is an opportunity. And that might mean you need to innovate a little bit more, but let's take that challenge and try and innovate and find a solution to it. So, seeing it as an opportunity.
Right. Others to share. Yes.
Well, I just thought that one of the points Dr. Podar pointed out about, we would have thought 10 years ago that with private space coming into education, we'll have more equitable education, dispersed for the masses. But probably what's happening is that the wedge of inequity is actually getting deeper because you don't have the cross-pollination of these different economic strategies in the same school. In fact, schools are becoming symbolic of the different economic strategies. So that's one learning for what may be happening. I don't know how we can fix it or whether we can fix it, but it's one definitely very strong perspective. And the second is, as you mentioned, before I came to this room, I didn't know that there were a lot of young people who were passionate about education. But having seen Shaheen to speak and Avansha speak, I think it was absolutely thrilling to see so many young people interested and passionate.
Fantastic. Maybe one more.
Can I say something?
Of course.
I might want to disagree. Is that okay?
Yes. I was encouraged.
Basically, from whatever little knowledge that I have or understanding I have, I may not necessarily agree with the point because I've been to rural India all over, from north, south, east, west. And we did a study where we wanted to see the quality of education versus, how when distance, when you're away from Delhi, the metropolitan city, then what happens to the quality of education. And interestingly, I saw that there were government schools, and if there was one government school, which was again funded by government pumping up the money, all right, you have teachers who are getting great salary. You had private schools mushrooming up. So there was one government school and there would be 4 or 5 private schools which are purely initiative taken by the local people. And they didn't even have a proper building. They were paying, of course, students were farmers. These farmers were, they were paying 500 because there was a fee attached to it. And interestingly, a farmer who got his child in a government school found that the quality of education was a big question mark, so he got the child admitted to a private school. So in fact, in one paper, Professor James Tooley said that are we not backing the wrong horse? So the government may be backing the wrong horse. So I personally feel that yes, I think it's wonderful to have a synergy of whether it's private or government initiatives of this kind.
And if you met, so Professor James Tooley, one of the key academics from the UK, spends a lot of time in Ghana and India now, who's tried to really drive the low-fee private school sector because it said it's come from communities itself. that they've actually set up these schools, so now he's looking to scale those in some ways. You wanted to add, yes?
On a lighter note, after spending 8 years in Delhi, somebody feels that Delhi is educated, I feel very flattered. Seriously, I deliberately want to take a very strong opposite stance. Not that I'm completely convinced about my own stance, but that there is just the stance is this. Is social inclusion more about enabling those who are underserved, or is it more about disabling those who are overserved? To explain?
No, I think let it sit in the room for a moment, then you can explain, but I think it was clear. I think people are processing it as well. But carry on.
So, most of us think education is for employability. But if you really look at some of the, I have to slightly shift the thinking to one particular aspect. Whatever governance structure that has ever come into this country was elected by not more than 9% of this country's population. Not more. The maximum votes that any government in power in India has ever got is 9% of India's population. So you can very well understand that the governance structure is technically not even endorsed by 91, probably, you can do the math, 91%. Now the question is, that 9% however comes from a lot of those areas which we believe is economically underserved. If they are controlling the governments, if we can educate them, and if they are the ones who are setting the government, they can even ask the government what they want. The reason they are being disintermediated even after the fact that they set up the government is because somebody else comes in, which is called as overserved, and overrides the agenda. So if I can educate those people and say, you know what, you have installed the government there, and you can ask whatever you want, chances are a lot of these attendant issues may be solved. So that's where the statement comes. Maybe education can truly make them feel powerful, adding on to the fact that they are the ones who have installed the government.
Thank you for those comments. Did anyone else want to bring something to the room?
Can I add to it?
I'd love you to.
I would support what he said about disabling the overserved or served. When you said that a poor school has to become a good school, you said it has to move to literacy, numeracy, etc. Remember one of your slides right in the beginning in the morning.
Yes.
And when a very good school has to move to an excellent school, we have to talk about imbibing in our children creativity, analytical thinking, innovation, etc. When we bring this 25% in RTE or the underserved in, at times we need to pull back and go back to making our schools serve literacy and numeracy and not creative and analytical thinking. So are we serving the underserved or are we disabling the served?
So I want this to hang in the room. The only thing I'll add as a facilitator is it may not be an either or. This possibly may be one of the areas of innovation that possibly the private schools need. How do we do literacy and numeracy through creative and analytical thinking? Are there ways to structure and order the timetable, the day, the teacher resources, maybe even utilize technology in new ways to be able to do it? But yes, you're right. There's new challenges here, and I just want to keep that in the room. One of the things I did say, though, is we want to have a high floor and no ceiling. So I think that's probably I want to make sure that there's a high floor, we serve the underserved. Probably not at my perspective would I ever want that to stop people reaching for the stars and where education could go in India. But limited resources means that will be a challenge, won't it? Thank you for sharing that. Did anyone else want to bring something to the room? Can you feel like we're getting to know each other now? You feel this? This is wonderful. Thanks so much for those who are sharing.
I just want to respond to these two comments because I think I disagree with. So, for example, of the 25%, we strongly believe that when you bring in the 25%, you're actually doing something good. You're actually doing a favor to the 75%. I think we need to recognize that. And I think that the learning that happens in that process is like extremely important, and it's probably more than potentially the academic thing that the 25% may gain. I'm saying this because in a school in Ahmedabad, we actually, for a number of years, we actually had 25% children voluntarily way back in 96, 97, and we saw this process happening. I mean, that learning, people talked about the stratification of schools that has happened over the last 20 years. So the learning in heterogeneous groups is extremely high. I think there's a huge value there. There was talk about, in the rural areas, people prefer private schools. But if you ask them why they prefer private schools, their reasons are that, one, they wear ties, and these are real research studies and the reasons quoted. The second is it's an English medium school, and the third is that they have benches to sit on. Not necessarily true, but I mean those are the perceptions. So there's a perception that government schools are not good, teachers don't land up, private schools are good. There's this thing. I'm not saying it's completely incorrect or not founded on reality, but more and more studies show that when it actually comes to learning, you can't really say that one of them is doing much better. But the parent may not understand that. So we cannot go too much by the parental perceptions only.
Great. Thanks so much for those who've shared those insights. And I want to leave some of the tensions in the room. That's what we want. Intelligent minds who can handle some ambiguity, who can handle some tensions between their values and what's doable at this point, between what works for them now and what might be possible later on. Let's hang that in the room. Can we please thank again all those who've contributed on this session. And as we transition now into our last key problem on technology, I'd ask that you work with the person next to you and say, what are the connections I can already make between the issues of teacher preparation and the initiatives we discussed, and the issues of equity and inclusion that we discussed? Could you work hard with the person next to you and say, what are the connections I can already make at the bottom levels of the schools, at the toughest, all the way up through to some of the private schools, right up at the excellent level we've been discussing. Form some connections in your mind between equity and teaching, and then we're going to move into Sultan walking us into the technology area. Take 5 minutes for then, and then we'll move in. Thanks so much. Put some music on. Music. So just work it. I'll just put that in the background, I guess. Is that okay? Yep. Just work out how you want to use the time between now and break, and then after break. But why not work on the ones that could be the 20% that give us 80%? And we really thought that if we could deal with teachers, all the research says that teachers matter. We can't get around the quality of our profession. Let's deal with that. And then let's spend the middle of the day thinking about equity, really something of our values, of our perceptions, a burden or an opportunity, which of course has implications for how we will teach in the schools. But let's deal with this front on rather than just ignoring it. And then thirdly, we wanted to look at the third part of this triangle was around technology and around these key questions of how could we harness the potential for technology to transform teaching and learning. They're not separate questions, but they're actually interconnected. But if we could make progress on all three in our conceptual understanding and also in some of the initiatives we could drive, we think perhaps that would be some of the starting point for a LearnShift in India. But when we came to this question and we were discussing who could lead this kind of discussion, who understands the opportunities for technology, who spends a huge amount of time with teachers and students, Sultan, your name was, of course, the first on our list. The founder of EduMedia, a serial entrepreneur, a passionate educator. And every time I see your Facebook update since we met, it's Sultan working again with another group of students, providing them with an opportunity for deep problem-solving learning, sharing ideas. So Sultan, thanks for being here, number one. Thanks for leading us through this session. And why don't we make him feel very welcome as he starts up.